a great introduction just now. And with now, I will gladly invite our second speaker to deliver his sharing. Please welcome.
Thanks, Rihanna. Can everybody hear me clearly?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right, just give me a moment. Let me share my presentation. Just gonna look for this and share. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Gavin. I am a co-founder of an organization called PLUHO, People Like Us Hangout. So we are basically an LGBTQ organization that supports LGBTQ community in Malaysia through community building work, services, and also empowerment work. And today, I want to actually just share to everyone here what are the systemic oppression and discrimination that has been faced by the LGBTQ community in Malaysia for all this while. And also, what does that mean, right? I will actually, explain further down the line. So just to, cover, what are the SDG goals that we are trying to tackle here. The first one is basically good health and well-being under Goal 3, and Goal 5, gender equality, and also Goal 10, reduce inequalities. And so I figure that, sometimes, I think it feels like all of us know what LGBTQ means, but sometimes I also cannot know for sure, which is why I decided to kind of have like a crash course for everybody here to kind of like, understand what does LGBTQ means. LGBTQ stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer. And also for those of us who are still questioning our gender and also our sexual orientation. So it can be used as an adjective, and also it can be used as a noun when we, refer LGBTQ. And the next one, look at this cute gender bear. So this gender bear basically, is kind of like a guide for us to understand ourselves better. It does not only applies to LGBTQ persons. So I think any of us here, whether you're straight or gay, you fall under any of these parameters as well. And let me just quickly go through this. In order for LGBTQ to identify ourselves in terms of the spectrum, we usually go through these 4 different categories. And the first one is gender identity. So gender identity is basically located in your brain. How you see yourself as a person, whether you feel like you are a man or you are a woman. And it has sometimes nothing to do with, whether the IC says that you are a man or you are a woman. And the second part is sexual orientation. Sexual orientation is actually in your heart. It depends on, who is the person that you are attracted to, either romantically or sexually. And if you're a man, then you're attracted to another man, then you're gay. If you're a woman, you're attracted to another woman, then you're a lesbian. And there's also anywhere in between, right? So like, it doesn't necessarily have to be, I only can love men and I only can love women. So different people, they fall under, different kind of parameters in this scale. And the third part is sex. Sex, usually, we know our sex when we are born as a baby, right? And the doctors will just look at our genitalia and will let us know, oh, this is actually a boy or this is actually a girl. And we almost think that that is always the case, but that is actually not. Actually, a lot of babies born without a clear, gender genitalia in the baby's body. So sometimes, doctors would just have to make a decision, whether this is a boy or this is a girl. And there are also a lot of times the terms intersex comes in that, because the genitalia cannot really tell whether it's a female or it's a male. And the last category is gender expression. And gender expression is basically your entire body, right? Like, how do you want to present yourself? How do you want to express yourself? So like, for example, if I'm a man, today and I decided to kind of wear dresses or put on makeups, does not necessarily mean that I suddenly become a woman. I still identify myself as a man. It's just that, you know, at this particular moment of time, I decided to wear dresses. And, you know, sometimes that has nothing to do with like, you know, how I identify in terms of gender. Of course, you know, this is just a very, very crash course. I welcome folks here to later ask more questions in the end as well. And I want to talk about systemic oppression. What is systemic oppression? Systemic oppression actually describes institutional, structural, and cultural discrimination towards a group of people. And in this case today, we're talking about LGBTQ communities. So it's not just like discrimination as well. Sometimes you can describe the situation where, you know, causing disadvantages to a group of people. So when we talk about systemic oppression, it is existed in the system itself. It is systemic, and sometimes it also has historical precedents. You know, something happens in the past, you know, that created the system that we are having right now. And I will actually explain more later. So when we talk about system, you know, how does it manifest, right? So it can manifest in like different kind of areas in Malaysia itself, either in economic, social, political, and our cultural system. And when we talk about systemic oppression, I think it's very important for us to know is that, you know, we are not all born this way. Like, I mean, we don't born as a homophobic, or we don't born as a transphobic person. We actually learn all this when we were young, or when the society around us tell us to hate a particular group of people, we learn from that. And therefore, all of these negative forms of prejudice or bias can learn and therefore can be unlearned. And let's take a closer look towards like, you know, a different kind of levels of like oppression and discrimination that faced by LGBTQ community. And we are going to look at it under 3 levels: institutional level, cultural, structural level, interpersonal, and personal level. Familiar faces. So when we talk about institutional levels, we need to talk about laws, policies, and all the structure that is governing the nation. And when we talk about institutional level discrimination and oppression, we definitely need to talk about the laws that put all the LGBTQ community in fear, and also, having problems having their daily lives because of all these laws that's existed, right? The first one is Sodomy Laws 377, where, we all familiar the case. Me, myself, I grew up hearing Anwar's trial on like 377, whether they're having sex and then they put the whole mattress into the court and etc. So I think all the LGBTQ people in Malaysia knows that, as an LGBT person, it's illegal in Malaysia, and you can be charged in court like Anwar. So this is like a constant reminder that this is the laws that exist. The second one is, of course, in Malaysia we have dual legal system. So it's not just like criminal laws, civil laws. We also have state different kind of Islamic laws. And just a few years ago, there's a lesbian caning that happened in Terengganu. And also the recent case of Sajat, I think any of us somehow will get to know what's going on with Sajat, because there's just like so much of like media coverage and also police forces that has been allocated to talk about Sajat or deal with Sajat's issues. So this paints a picture of what are the laws that is targeting us, but what are the effects and impacts of all these laws? I'm not sure whether you heard of this term, if you're being treated as criminals and therefore sometimes you behave like criminals. And what does that mean is that, you go out to the street, you feel like, people is going to, do something bad against you because, the laws exist in the nation. This is how laws work as a tool, right? That they keep people in check, they put people in fear. And this has actually a tremendous impact towards our LGBTQ people's mental health. And of course, the second impact is like, some of us have to choose to live in a closet so that, you know, we won't be found out by other people. And we are living in a world that is like, you know, self-denial. Sometimes we create different persona just when we are entering into different spaces in order to keep ourselves safe. And therefore, you know, the leading to the deteriorating of mental health situations. Sometimes we are not able to share our personal problems and struggles to our friends, to our family members, and therefore lack of the social support system that we can have. And after talking about the institutional level, the second one is basically cultural and structural level. It feels a bit like the same, but there's a kind of like a slight difference in between. So we are talking about structural barriers for LGBTQ people to access to different spaces. So like, you know, for example, employment opportunities, healthcare, education, shelter, and justice, right? For the first one, employment opportunities, I have to highlight on like trans community, because, you know, trans community is so not recognized under Malaysia, and therefore it has a huge impact when it comes to applying jobs and, you know, or get into employment opportunities. And sometimes as a result of that, a lot of trans community, in order to survive, they have to go into sex work. Because, you know, all the other opportunities were just kind of closed down for them because, you know, they don't dress like the way they should according to their IC. And the second one is healthcare. You know, when it comes to LGBTQ community, you know, mostly it ties back to all these sexual health issues that the government likes to highlight. And yet at the same time, it feels like a bit discouraging and, you know, disempowering for the community to go towards healthcare system and to get access to the services that they need. And the third one is education. If we look at education, I'm not sure whether you guys still remember the case of Navin back in Penang 4 or 5 years ago, where he was basically brutally killed based on the perceived gender expression and also gender identity. Because, you know, he act as sissy, act as pondan, and therefore become victims of bully in the school, and resulted of being killed in the school. And the court case is still happening right now after 5 years. And just to for the shelter and justice, basically is that, you know, a lot of times LGBTQ teens and youth, after they came out to the family, or, you know, after they're being found out by the family about the LGBTQ identities, they were being kicked out from their home, or sometimes they just feel like they have to run away from their home because, you know, this is not safe for them. And part of the work that my organization is doing is actually a LGBTQ inclusive shelter, so that people who have been kicked out from home can actually go to shelter like ours to kind of like provide safety to them. And of course, the third one is interpersonal and personal level. Interpersonal and personal level means that, you know, the relationship that we have to juggle either within ourselves and also with the people around us. And also, you know, what are the tones that were set by the society as well. So these are the common things that we have to deal with on a daily basis in terms of like LGBTQ stigma and stereotypes against LGBTQ community. You know, people think that we are all HIV carriers, or people think that, you know, we all have mental health issues and therefore we have to like, you know, get treated and etc. And also there's this homophobic and transphobic culture that existed in our society and in our social circles. Like if you're a man, then you have to behave like a man. If you behave like sissy, then, you know, people are just going to bully at you. So sometimes there's a lot of pressure for us to perform as well. And of course, there's also gender roles and expectations, you know, and also the pressure to get married. That you as a man, you need to like carry on the line of the family, and therefore you have to, you know, get married and have kids and etc. Yeah, so just to sum this up, is like this is the environment that, you know, we will have to live through in order to kind of like sustain ourselves. I actually see a hands up. Should I actually answer questions now, or should I go later?
So, for the Q&A session, if the participants would
All
like
right.
to ask any question, you can just pick maximum of 2 questions in the chat box.
Okay, sure. Let me just go through my slides then. So this is basically my last slide. I think it's more towards like from me asking questions in this space, right? When we talk about SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, we always like look at the principle here is like leaving no one behind. And how do we actually leave no one behind, you know, when our system has already designed or created to leave someone behind? Which is why I want to ask these questions in this space, like how do we include LGBTQ communities in the conversation of SDG, and to ensure that our voices are being heard in the decision-making process, especially when the government or when the state is creating policies that is about LGBTQ communities. And how do we also create a safer environment for the LGBTQ community in Malaysia, when it is a lot of reported cases of like homophobia and transphobia, and also violence that has happened to our LGBTQ communities. So I guess I just want to end this session with these 3 questions for everybody to think of. And I already see some questions in the chat, so I will probably deal with that or probably answer that as well. Thank you so much.